Welcome to the Deep Dive. This is where we take the sources you provide and really dig in to pull out the key knowledge tailored just for you. Today, we're looking at excerpts from Knife Combat version of Spetsnaz GRU Self-Defense with Knife by Alexander Popov.
Right, the Spetsnaz GRU manual.
Exactly. So our mission basically is to unpack the core ideas, the principles, and, the practical side of this particular knife fighting style. We want to give you a condensed but insightful look at it.
Yeah, absolutely. And the intro itself really sets the scene, doesn't it? It talks about Spetsnaz GRU, the Russian military intelligence special forces.
Right, behind enemy line stuff.
Exactly. Clandestine ops, where the objective is, well, neutralizing the enemy quickly, any means necessary. And what jumps out is how central knife combat is.
It lists quite an arsenal, doesn't it?
It really does. A knife bayonet, a combat knife, survival knife, clasp knife, even hidden and throwing knives. It tells you a lot about their philosophy.
Be prepared for anything up close.
Precisely. Each blade sort of has its place in their toolkit for the mission.
Okay, so let's get into that core principle. The manual says a knife fight is incredibly short, like fractions of a second short.
That's a huge point. It underscores why their training demands flawless execution of the basics. It needs to be automatic.
No time to think.
None. It's about building that muscle memory, that ingrained reaction, so it just happens under pressure.
And then it gets into these peculiar features of the Spetsnaz style. It's not just static, right?
Not at all. It's very dynamic. Popov mentions lots of withdrawals, jumps, turns, sudden changes in level and attack direction, especially, he notes, against multiple enemies.
And feints. Lots of feints.
Yes, exactly. Like feints in boxing,
Yeah.
Deceptive moves to draw a reaction, create an opening, and it's all done in continuous motion.
So it's hard to track.
Extremely hard. The idea is to make the knife's movement unpredictable. You basically weaponize movement itself. It's defense and offense woven together, trying to guess the next strike. The manual suggests it's almost impossible.
And knowing the moves isn't enough. It talks about combinations, these bunches.
Right, the bunches, linking those basic techniques together. But it has to be spontaneous, based on the situation.
Like speaking a language. You learn words, then form sentences.
That's a great analogy. Improvisation is vital, but it's got to be grounded in solid experience and knowing those fundamentals inside out.
So mastery isn't just the techniques.
No, it's the art of combining them dynamically. You can't just randomly throw moves together and expect it to work. There are principles behind effective combinations, body mechanics, psychology.
Okay, so in this deep dive, we'll look at some of those effective combinations, how they're used, maybe even against two armed attackers.
Yeah, the manual covers that, and countermeasures too, which is obviously critical if you're thinking self-defense.
Let's shift to the conception of knife combat section. It gets pretty serious straight away. Extreme caution needed.
Definitely. Any false step, potentially fatal. And while you can't read minds, the stance, the enemy's posture, can give you clues.
Like reading traffic signs.
Kind of. If you don't understand what certain postures might mean, you're driving blind, basically. Increases the risk hugely.
And it contrasts knife fighting with unarmed combat. Even shorter duration, higher risk.
Much higher. A glancing blow can be disabling or worse. And unlike unarmed fighting, blocking with your arms, extremely dangerous.
You get cut.
Most likely, yeah. And even closing the distance, trying to smother the attack, still very risky. A short slash can do major damage.
So tactically, it's different. The manual advises against, fake postures or unnecessary movement.
Right. Exaggerated moves, telegraphing your intentions. A good opponent exploits that. You create a moment of unreadiness.
Readiness is everything.
Paramount. Being able to react instantly, dodge aside, step back. If you're mid-movement doing something unnecessary, you're vulnerable.
Which leads to dodges, moving aside or back while slashing.
Exactly. Followed by a counterattack at vital points, arteries, joints, vulnerable areas.
And it mentions checking clothing.
Yeah, interesting point. Thick clothes might offer some minimal protection against a slash, maybe making an arm block slightly less suicidal, but still incredibly risky.
It also talks about spotting a novice versus a pro. How they move.
Yeah, a novice might hold the knife way out, make big, flashy moves. A pro is economical, purposeful, reacts to the situation, doesn't show the weapon unnecessarily, waits for the opening.
Attacking a ready enemy is like jumping into a precipice.
That's the quote, yeah. Very dangerous.
But if the enemy's ready, you might use false actions, feints, to draw them out.
Yes, but again, a professional won't make wild, obvious moves themselves while doing that. They keep control. If your opponent is the one flailing, they make themselves the target.
Okay, what about multiple armed enemies? That sounds terrifying.
It escalates dramatically. Standing still is basically suicide. Constant motion is key.
Move towards one to avoid getting flanked.
That's the tactic described. Move towards one, keep observing the others, look for chances for strong slashes, vital points, limbs while moving aside again.
But it's complex because the second guy might attack while you're focused on the first.
Exactly. You might neutralize one threat, but the other is still right there. You can't always capitalize on one enemy's mistake because the other might jump in.
So you need incredible awareness.
Constant awareness, tracking everything, arms, legs, posture, weapon angle. All those little details give clues.
But consciously processing all that seems impossible in the heat of the moment.
And that's the crucial point the manual makes. This analysis has to happen subconsciously for rapid decision.
Consciousness is the strategist. Subconsciousness is the fast computer.
That's the analogy used, yeah. Consciousness learns and programs. Subconsciousness executes based on that programming instantly. The goal of training is to drill the right algorithms into the subconscious.
So in the fight, you kind of switch off the thinking part.
Ideally, yes. To avoid hesitation, react based on that deep training. Like a musician playing scales automatically, freeing their mind for the music itself.
So bad training is really dangerous.
Extremely. If you train the wrong things, embed flawed reactions, it leads to disaster, especially against knives.
Which brings us neatly to the warnings section. This seems relevant beyond just knife fighting.
Oh, definitely. For any martial art, really. It stresses knowing why you're training. Sport, health, fun, or primarily self-defense. Your goal shapes the training.
And for self-defense, choose your club carefully. Visit a few.
Strongly advised. Compare methods. Ask tough questions. How do they know these techniques work? Is the feedback real?
And are they tested realistically?
Crucially, tested against skilled resisting opponents, not just compliant partners or beginners.
The manual is skeptical of just trusting opinions or even just sparring.
Right. Sparring is useful, but it's controlled. It's not the chaos of a real attack.
So full contact testing. With protection.
That's the emphasis. Tested under pressure against different people, does it actually work? And the manual is blunt. If a place doesn't do hard, realistic training, or if students can't apply what they learn in those conditions, leave.
Building on a shaky foundation?
Yeah, it'll collapse when you need it most. That's the implication.
Okay, so let's wrap up the key takeaways from this deep dive. Spetsnaz GRU knife combat. Huge emphasis on speed, decisive action.
Absolutely. And understanding the opponent's stance, anticipating moves.
Plus those unique features, the continuous motion, the feints.
And that core idea, training basics until there's subconscious automatic reactions.
And we have to repeat that warning. Knife combat is incredibly dangerous. Realistic training isn't optional, it's essential.
Couldn't agree more. Without it, you might develop a false confidence that's, frankly, dangerous in itself.
So a final thought for everyone listening. Think about these principles. Anticipating moves, developing automatic responses under pressure. How might that apply outside of physical combat?
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? High-stakes situations at work, negotiations, maybe even creative thinking. Right. Anywhere rapid decisions based on deep knowledge are needed.
How do we build our own subconscious algorithms in those areas? Something to ponder.
Definitely. And remember, we've really just scratched the surface here today, focusing on the core concepts.
True. The full manual goes into much more detail on specific combinations, examples, lots more there for anyone wanting to dig deeper into this specific style.